are basically, you know, on top of things, and we've put our hands and touch and feel and things of that nature. Just want to make sure, let me see, Charlie, I think everybody on here, I'm just looking at one more form and then we're going to get rolling. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about when we talk about Infinity, right, is, you know, there's big features, advantages, and benefits with it, right? The whole reason that we go with Infinity is literally the fact that we want to make sure we've got something that separates you from anyone else out in the market, right? You know, one of the big differences about when you're doing basically projects, or you're looking at, you know, going against somebody in a house, against another company, you want to make sure that you understand what you're getting, right? You want to understand what the major difference is. So most of us, and all of us, should have already gone through the Infinity from Marvin training. And that just allows us to make sure that we know, you know, what our odds and ends are about, right? So we know that basically starts talking about like the Hallmark certification, right? You know, does everybody on here know what the Hallmark certification is? So Charlie, do you know what the Hallmark certification is and why it's important?
Yes, because it distinguishes you from pretty much every other company. And there's even a site you can go to that shows the companies that are Hallmark certified, which is pretty much us, Pella, and Anderson.
Yep. So there's only 3, right? There's not even a single vinyl window company that's Hallmark certified. So again, if you're trying to go through that, you'd have to ask yourself, right? Is if you're going through that Hallmark certification and you're looking down, and if there's no vinyl windows that are Hallmark certified, well, you got to ask yourself why, right? Because remember, there's stringent tests that they put on that Hallmark certification, and they give them their own Hallmark number, right? And that number in there kind of is a quality number, which tells them the variance. So Charlie, in your mind, how would you use that in the house to help you become a little bit stronger?
Again, you're not swimming in the sea of sameness, right? Because if they're already thinking vinyl, you're putting yourself in a new category that they're not in. They're not aware of Hallmark certification. So for me, I would just, you know, hammer on that, and, you know, other things with the window, the not having weep holes, not, you know, obviously how strong, I was going to say fiberglass, how strong Ultrex is compared to Fibrex and any other material. There's no comparison.
Yeah. So, I mean, why is that a benefit in our market? If you had to really sit there and think, why is that a benefit in our market?
In our market? Well, just because we're the only one out there.
Okay. So when we look at that, if you're going to do an inspection, you know, how would we make basically Ultrex be the window they need and want to take care of the problem in their house? What are some conditions that we might be talking about? Tell me about condition and environment that might be where we can separate ourselves from a vinyl plastic window and basically the Ultrex, or say even you had a bid that had vinyl and you had basically one that had, let's say, Fibrex in it, right? AKA Renewal by Anderson. And let's say maybe Milgard was out there. How would you go about attacking that customer, and what would you do? How would you start out if they told you at the beginning, you know, we've had, you know, couple companies out here that carry vinyl. We've had Renewal by Anderson. We've had Milgard out here. You know, you're the last one we're going to see, or, you know, we've got 3 more estimates coming behind you, but that's who we've seen so far. We really want to see how you really want to see what you've got, but we don't have a lot of time. How would you go about that?
Okay. I don't know in what order or direct order, but one thing I would differentiate us, our pricing is less than Anderson, right? Because usually when they'll say Anderson, they're like, oh, they're way too expensive. And I never like talk super bad about them. And I'll say, I used to work for them. They make a good window, but they're really mainly for the cold and back east. Where this window performs much better. And then I show them the difference in the pamphlet showing how strong Fibrex and and Ultrex to show how weak vinyl is. Obviously, the stick, the vinyl stick that you leave out in the sun, another way to differentiate between them. The number mark that they put on the window that no other window company does, and you show them, it shows exactly the date, the time. It's linked to their house. You know everything about them. That's about all I can think of at this moment.
Yeah, well, that's the, I'm sending one quick message real quick. All right, so the purpose that we want to make sure is, again, we know how to figure out the difference, right? So if you take, and you even look at a product line, I'm not comparing us to Fibrex. I don't even care about Fibrex, but if you do get into that route, an important thing to know, yes, generally they're going to be more expensive of us. But secondly, in case they actually finally did a good job, then, talking about, their material, you think about what it's made out of, right? You got 40% wood fibers. You have 60% copolymer, right? Which is AKA vinyl. So 60% of their very product is one that's thermoplastic, right? And that's going to be moving at a different rate than wood itself. If you think about it, and I was playing around with Mike Pierce the other day, and the thing that I was playing with is I was sending him messages, and these messages, I don't know if they saved to my phone or they saved to here, but I was sending him pictures of vinyl siding. And what I'm going to do real quick, I want to show you something that'll make maybe a little bit more sense, right? So you guys can see my screen, right? So, and nailing flanges, boom. All right, so when you take a basically vinyl siding, which sits on the outside of a house, right? So real quick, when you take this, that's a corner piece. Here we go. When you take this piece here, which is going to be setting off in the corner, right? So vinyl siding, which is big in the Midwest and the East Coast, is not on the West Coast, right? So first off, what you got to ask yourself is, if it was such a good product, why would it not be used over on the West Coast, where it seems like that would be a smarter move, right? So a lot of times in your hot desert type climates, they don't use vinyl. They can't use vinyl because of the heat, right? Not to mention, if you see the dial here, see how it looks like the nail heads? These nail heads sit right in the middle of this nailing flange. Dave, do you have any clue why it has to go in the middle of nailing flange and why this is a no-no? Can you hear me, Meggert?
Hello? Am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
I can hear you.
Okay. So why do you think the nails would have to go? Okay, I said, so why do you think in this illustration, this piece of vinyl siding, why do you think there's nailing flanges that sit in the middle of the vinyl siding?
To hold the vinyl on to the house?
Holds the vinyl on the house, but why do you think it's in the middle of this nailing flange and why they say no right here? Why do you think that is?
Because the vinyl's crappy, it's going to break, and the nail's going to break right through that flange.
Well, to an extent, right? If you look at the illustration down here, see where the nail head goes? It's got about a 16th inch, variance that happens on this. So what happens is they can't nail this tight. If you nail this tight, that's gonna basically cause a wave in the siding. I'm gonna show you a picture of that in a second. But the reason it has to sit in the middle is vinyl's designed to slide side to side on the house. And it's designed to slide side to side on the house. If it's nailed too tight or it's not nailed in the correct place, the nail is gonna fight the vinyl, which is gonna cause it to warp on the home, right? and you have to set the nail in straight as you see it coming here on the side, it's going to buckle and twist because vinyl is designed to move, right? And if vinyl is designed to move on the house side to side, I'm going to try to find you guys a good illustration here. But if vinyl is designed to move side to side on the house, if I nail that in the wrong place, then what happens is then you start getting what they call wavy siding, where you get vinyl that starts to basically change its shape and move because the nail pattern wasn't correct. Do you see that? So what happens is you'll get it to where they start to buckle and pop and wave. And the reason why is because the nails aren't put in the right place, because it's designed, again, to slide side to side on that house. If I walked up to that house on that and I could take that siding, I could slide literally the panel from left to right. And if it can't move, it's nailed too tight. So the whole purpose of it is designed to move and fluctuate inside the house. And if it doesn't move, then what happens is they start to fight each other. See here in the corner how this thing's starting to buckle and move out? I know you're like, Dustin, why are you talking about vinyl siding? Because the purpose is, again, in the house, if the nail isn't correct, and you figure they have to basically put a nail right in the middle of that hem, and it's not done perfect in every single one of them, you're going to have what they call that friendly wavy siding, right? So now if vinyl expands and contracts 7 times the rate of glass, it expands and contracts 4 times the rate of wood, right? So it's constantly moving. If I take a basically window and I put a screw in there in one place, right smack dab in the center, and there's no basically flange on here that allows the vinyl to expand and contract, what's going to end up happening to that window when it sits inside the house? Right? Because it can no longer move is what that's showing you. So again, if that can't move, you see like even on a new home construction window, there's a nailing flange that still, they put the nail in the middle of it so it has expansion contraction so it can move side to side. On a vinyl replacement window, there is no nailing flange. They just literally set face to face. So you see these guys here, when they set that siding, they basically have to leave a 1/4 inch gap between this section right here and this one because they got to constantly be moving. Now, the reason that that's important in a window, I'm going to show you in a second here, is when I take a vinyl window like this one and I look at the side, there is 1 round screw in there, right? So what happens is if I'm in an interior controlled climate, not that big of a deal, right? But if I basically take something that's not in an interior controlled climate that's hot, that vinyl can expand, at temperatures of, 80 degrees, 100 degrees, things of that nature, can basically expand up to a 1/4 inch movement, which means it's moving a 1/4 inch, right? That much is how much it's moving backwards and forwards, roughing against not only the glass seal, but the nail or the screw that's actually holding that into place. So it's literally fighting itself in basically that nature. Because one of the things is vinyl moistens soft in extreme heats. It dries out and becomes brittle in extreme colds, right? The life expectancy of a vinyl window as a replacement window is 3 to 6 years, right? You can get about double the time out of a new home construction window because they have those nailing flanges, right? So if I've got a hole, and that hole, I'm basically putting a nail right in the middle of that hole. Then what happens is this can move this way and this can move this way, right? So I want that basically vinyl to basically be expanding and contracting, whether it go that way or that way. It doesn't matter if it's left or right that it's expanding, contracting. It has a way to move. So what they did is they had to build the flange on there with the gap onto it to allow that vinyl to move and expand and contract, right? Which is why you can get about 10 to 15 years out of a set of new construction vinyl windows, but nobody does that. They put retrofit windows over top of an existing aluminum window and they screw it into place, which is holding into one spot. That's not what vinyl was designed to do. Vinyl moves at a great rate. It's known to expand and contract. So if you try to hold that in one place, that's going to fail. So if you're in a place where early in the morning, say it's 40 degrees, and then by afternoon, it's 90 degrees, think about that temperature swing that product has to do, right? So day in and day out for long periods of time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that's not doing what it needs to do, because eventually it's going to wear out. Because if you were nailed into place, say your hand were nailed into place and you couldn't move it, eventually it's going to start working against you, and you're going to start creating a bigger hole, and it's going to create bigger problems inside of there. So the same thing is when you're looking at a window, when that's screwed into place, it's constantly fighting those screws. If you go look at a vinyl window that's been in a house for basically, 5 years plus, it's going to look like a disaster. And I don't care what treatment or sunblock they use, just like if you jump in a swimming pool and I get back out, I got to reapply suntan lotion, right? Or sunblock, because again, I've just washed it all off. So now any protective overcoat I might have put on, pretty much gone, right? Especially when you get the UV rays of sun, they come in and generally delaminate floors. They beat the crap out of anything that sits in its way, chairs, upholstery, whatever it might do. There's nothing that can really fight that off, right? That's why the glass is such a big deal. But the framing that holds the glass, knowing it's 90% of the glass is 90% of that whole frame or of that whole window, and then 10% to 15% is just the framing material. How that frame material is built makes a major difference, right? So again, if I have something that's like that, vinyl siding is notorious for insurance claims in the Midwest, right? If you get a hailstorm, you're screwed. That's basically when pellets of basically hard rocks come out of the air and it pelts the siding. Vinyl's pretty much done on the spot, on demand. So what happens is you are literally having to create an insurance claim, and then basically a lot of basically your insurance companies in the Midwest will raise your deductible if they know you got vinyl siding on there, because they know even though you put it on there for maintenance, that they're going to have to replace it. And it's one of the highest replaced items in there because, again, it can't withstand shock. There's no thermal shock. Secondly is with heat, right? In high heat, when you try to put basically vinyl siding in high heat areas, so watch this, vinyl siding and heat exposure. So when I take vinyl siding and it gets exposed to heat, basically it melts. Vinyl siding literally melts off the house. So when we look at this section here, right, with all the wavy siding, that's not only they nailed it tight, but also basically the heat has caused this thing to actually warp, right? Same thing is down here. It does not do well in extreme heats. It will actually buckle and start to pull out, which is why on the West Coast, we don't have winter here. So what happens is we get stuck with basically 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Most windows are out of their element, right? So why would I spend so much time talking about that? Janet, why do you think I would talk about that and go into that depth? Why do you think I would make that an important thing? Why do you think I'd be teaching you guys this today?
Because the materials that the competitors are selling are not applicable in this environment. And we have Ultrex is applicable for this environment. It's the best material you can choose in this environment. So you got to separate the materials itself and show them that there's really no other option for Southern California than Ultrex.
There you go. Perfect. And the reason why is, Mark Lance, I see you're out here, right? What's the difference between thermoplastic and thermoset?
The thermoplastic will bend under heat, and the thermoset is somewhat like concrete, and the heat won't affect it. It's like steel.
So if I'm in a hot area and there's a hot side of the house, right? Even if they put vinyl on another side of their house, how would I use that to my benefit so that way they wouldn't even consider putting vinyl in that area?
Yeah, if you have a southern exposure or a westerly exposure, the southern exposure is going to get sun most of the day, and the heat of the afternoon is going to get your western exposure. Those are both prime targets to use the Ultrex.
Okay. Now let me ask you another question. We'll take this one off to Charlie Brown again. Charlie Brown, if is there two different types of heat? Is there heat that comes from the sun, and then what's the other type of heat?
Surface heat.
UV rays.
So you got UV rays that comes from the sun. What would be the other type of heat? So you have solar heat gain, which is heat that comes from the sun. And what would be the other heat?
Radiant heat.
Radiant heat. That's basically the heat outdoors, right? Because you remember, glass is one of the best conductors known to man. If you guys aren't teaching your customers this and taking it back to elementary, right? So a seventh grader can understand it. Then you got to realize, I almost tell that chip dip thing where I talk about the glass bowl in the microwave. I almost do that every single time, right? Or why do you put aluminum foil over a baked potato? So what happens is, I always ask them, by these windows, you know, if the sun is out, but maybe not beating directly on the sun, does it still get hot through these windows? That's conductive, right? That radiant heat is also called conduction, right? Just like if I take a glass of ice water and a hot cup of coffee, and I'm trying to keep it in, and let's say I don't have a central air system, you know, how hot does it end up getting in that house, right? Or if I'm not turning the heater on, especially right now why it's so freaking hot outside, if I don't have the air conditioning on and basically it's blazing hot outside, how long does it take for it to get hot, especially by the windows? And how much heat is that letting getting in? Does that make sense? So think about a pot, for instance, right? You put a pot on top of basically let's say you're going to boil water, right? Now, the bottom of the pot is stuck on basically on the burner, right? So that's going to you'd expect the bottom of the pot to get really freaking hot, right? But let's say you put a basically metal stirring spoon in there, or aluminum stirring spoon, or metal. So you put that inside of there and you don't grab that with a glove and you just touch that spoon, even though it's separate from the pan. If I touch that metal spoon or something that's conductive material there, how's that going to work out when I touch it? Is it going to be cooler than the pan, or is it going to be just as hot? Dave, do you cook, Dave?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So say you were cooking and you let's say you had boiling water out there that's getting pretty hot, right? So, or you were basically trying to warm something up you're trying to warm something up on in a pan on the oven, right?
Like
So
oatmeal?
I put like oatmeal, let's say oatmeal, that's good. So let's say you're warming up some oatmeal. And if I'm putting oatmeal in, that oatmeal gets hot, and let's say I can't find my normal spatula, so I just put a spoon in there, a metal spoon. And I take that spoon and I put it inside of it. I leave there for a minute while it's sitting there getting warm, and I come grab that spoon. How hot's that spoon?
Well, it depends how long I left the spoon in there, but the longer I leave it in there, that conducts heat gets hotter.
So the chance that spoon's going to burn me and get super hot?
Yeah, especially if it's in there for quite a while. Well, just like the window. I mean, the pan's conducting the heat. The heat's traveling through the pan just like it does the window.
Okay. Is that maybe be why even they put a exhaust fan on a microwave that's above a stove?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if that just stayed there super hot, what would happen to the microwave above it?
What? I'm sorry?
I said that would actually burn the microwave to pieces up above it too, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
what I'm trying to share with you, what I'm trying to share with you guys is that conductive material, right? When you put a conductive material inside there, that hot's always going to be attracted to each other. It's going to be attracted to a conductor. And if you've got aluminum in there, you know, basically that's just going to help conduct that heat. But if I put a vinyl spoon in there or a plastic spoon, when it's piping hot, what could happen to that plastic spoon?
It melts.
It melts, right? Because is that the environment that plastic spoon's designed to be in?
Nope.
Sometimes those plastic spoons work really well if I'm doing ice cream or something else. But if I put that in a hot area, that's a problem, right? So the purpose is that wasn't the right conditioned environment for the spoon. So if you think about it, how does that relate to windows, right? Well, if I've got 90% of my windows glass, 10% frame, you know, I got to realize that the heat from that glass, just like a glass jar, glass bowl, is going to conduct heat all around it. That's going to do damage to the frame eventually, just like the plastic spoon would be if you put it inside the boiling water. Because eventually the heat that's coming from that window, if you're in a hot area, think about it, if it's 87 degrees outside, that's 143 degrees at the glass surface on the outside, right? So again, that heat that's coming from the actual frame itself is going to take a brunt of that heat. Therefore, they call that heat distortion, which means that could cause that to warp. And now suddenly you don't have you have operational reliability problems. Then secondly, you have challenges going on with the sill system because that's moving. Then you could be twisting. There's all kinds of different aspects that can cause that, which could cause actually the window where you got the weep holes to start to compress the frame on top of the weep holes, right? And then what happens is when you're talking about a vinyl window, they start warping here, and then they warp down in the sashes down here as well. And when they warp in the sashes down here, there is weep holes, right? And these weep holes come over here. If this is putting a lot of pressure on it, then suddenly this sash gets basically warped, and then all the water, instead of coming out of the weep hole, comes out and gets stuck in the middle of the frame. Then what happens, you get moisture that's stuck in there, which is going to attract insects and bugs that are literally going to be living inside of it. And those plastic little flaps will break off, and things are living inside your window. Okay. Next. Does that all make sense so far?
Yeah, and that's also why we use wood spoons, right? You put a wood spoon in when it's hot. The wood spoon doesn't get hot, but the wood spoon over time will break down, splinter. You got to buy a new wood spoon.
What I'm trying to share with you guys too is analogies you can use to kind of help yourself, you know, basically make sense to people, right? Because how do you make common sense common practice? If you've never done anything before and you've never been in the window industry, you're not going to freaking know, right? So when you take a material like this, I'm going to take the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about this material. This is called Everwood, right? So Charlie, what can you tell me about Everwood?
Well, it looks like wood, feels like wood, can be painted like wood, can be stained like wood, but it'll never rot. And it has the same characteristics of wood, that it's a great insulator and beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous, right? Look at that. That's a sexy looking window, right? So when you look at it on the inside of it, what I love is like an interior trim they make. See, this is a jam extension. They make a jam extension that is full, basically composite on the inside of it, right? So that Ultrex composite that's wrapped with that Everwood is different than wood, right? And the cool thing is this framing, if you do like a full frame, let's say you're going into wood and people don't want wood back on their house, right? They want to remove all the wood. Well, I could do a full frame Ultrex window. And then what happens is it has interceptors and grooves for the brick mold that goes on the outside, right? To take the place of brick mold on the exterior. It's actually manufactured to basically be one whole unit to take the place of it, rather than building a new buck frame, basically putting a new window jam in there, then putting basically putting second thought, basically brick mold on the outside, and then coming in with different interior trim. The cool thing is this is designed to be one whole unit, which means that on your full frames, you've got your Everwood interior, okay, which again is inorganic, which means you can put this in a bucket of water and take it out, and it's not going to do anything to damage this basic material itself, right? When it's stained, being inorganic means there's no moisture that's sitting there that's causing it to excrete up, which is going to kill your stain and going to basically make you have to restain every couple of years. It's going to keep that stain more true. It's going to save you money so you don't have to continue to keep staining. Secondly, is it has basically adjustable grooves in here that allow for expansion and contraction, right? Same thing on this, which is what we call an adjustable sash track, which means the sash track adjusts to allow for the expansion, contraction of the window to move and operate in there. So you never have the frame fighting the sash. It's always going to be stuck in there that right way. There's no wool pile weather stripping, which means, again, you have basically that neoprene, kind of like they put on the bottom of your dishwasher or on side of your, or on basically your refrigerator, that seal that's going to basically completely seal all the way around the area. So again, we want to make sure that, again, we're pointing out little things like this, right? And on the sash itself, they've said that this is so strong, the adhering bond of it, that it would literally tear the product apart before you could remove the basically Everwood finish on top of it, right? And the cool thing is it's not really that expensive to do. And this is going to give you, if you look at it, there's no places where you're seeing jam extension liners or where this is white or a certain color. The jam extension's even the Everwood. So it's going to look just like a natural wood window, only with zero maintenance, right? If you do one thing they call about a rich man's window or a wood window, considered a rich man's window, which means if you can afford to do it, you know you're never done paying for it. Because again, you have maintenance, you've got basically sealing, you've got basically to redo the glazing around it, the whole 9 yards, right? Cool thing about the glazing, there's no glazing bead on this window whatsoever. The actual frame is built around the glass, right? That's another big gigantic plus is when the glass is made, each one of these frames, this side of the frame, this side of the frame are put together, and in the corner, they basically weld the corner together with a chemical weld. That chemical weld going in the corner allows that thing to be full of polyurethane, so that way moisture and water can never leak in. The other cool part is there is no weep holes on this product. We basically build these things to look naturally like a natural old wood window, which all has slope sills. And those slope sills allow you to make sure that the water is planing off, right? A natural sill on a window is a 12 to 14 degree slope on a basically, on a double hung or basically an old glider window. If you walk on a wood window, they got a slope that comes out like this, right? If not, it would set flat and water would just set on top of that, creating a lot of damage and problems that happen onto it, right? So that slope is designed for water management. It allows the water to run back off away from the house to keep that moisture out. Windows were never designed to have internal water management systems, right? Never designed to have internal water management systems. If you watch that first video where I was taking the corner of the, what do you call it, the Impervia window, and I was showing you where it looks like duct tape and it has the internal water management system, that's one of the worst things you can do for a fiberglass window, because a fiberglass window, which is what they carry pretty much, has they put a lot of bonding aids and glues where you see stuff just falling out of the bottom, right? You see it blowing out because, again, they know that's the weak part of the window, so they try to do things to take care of it, right? There's always weakness, but if you overexpose it and you allow Mother Nature to run inside your frame of your window, does that really even make sense, right? Why would you want to introduce water inside your frame? Do you think that right there is enough to fight off Mother Nature and science? I think Mother Nature and science are going to win that all day long, especially in those certain points of the year where it looks like a monsoon coming down, right? So if you don't prepare for the worst, not to mention the heat and all the things, you're going to run yourself into a major problem. The other thing about Ultrex, which I love, you know, the pultrusion projects or the pultrusion aspects of fiberglass has been around since the 50s, right? So you look at it, strong as all hell. Second thing is when we put our acrylic coating on the top, it's 3 mil thick. So it's 3 times as thick. So that shell on there is going to keep this nice new luster look for the entire time it sits on the house, right? So you have that window that's going to give you that natural wood window appeal. It's mitered in the corner, so it's gorgeous through there. And your miters are nice and smooth, no ugly vinyl miter welds. And not to mention, it sits in there and it's a lot less bulky. So you look at this ugly montropolis of a thing, right? This is basically the Ultrex, right? You look at the gap here. I mean, Fibrex. Look at the gap in here, how ugly that is. And you don't even have a spacer. And this is considered an insert window, which means this is the smallest profile that they carry is on that insert window, right? This is a full frame. And if you just look at the difference in the full frame compared to this, before you even get up, and it's just holding it because the bottom's brick mold, if you just get that frame hasn't even started where the basically Ultrex windows ended. So they're going to lose the frame distance, which is going to be about that much more on top of there. So literally they're going to lose almost 4.5. And by the time you add the top into it, almost 9 inches of glass space, right? And realize if they're designing their house and you treat your windows kind of like you treat furniture. Think about it. People have $5,000 love seats. They have basically, several $1,000 kitchen tables, right? Sometimes the whole room is designed to one accent piece. And if you don't realize that your windows are kind of like furniture, then again, you're not moving yourself towards your goal, you're moving it away. And if you allow yourself to get stuck in a commodity, which means going against vinyl, and you're going head to head on price of vinyl, it means you forgot to build value, right? The whole purpose of the inspection is to earn credibility and build value, right? So what you got to do, if I would do a little research on vinyl siding and figure out why it warps, why you have to have a nailing flange on it. Google, why does vinyl siding have to have a nailing flange? Why do new home construction windows have a nailing flange, right? So if you look at those things, it's going to tell you because of the expansion contraction rate. It's going to give you an unbiased decision. And what I would do is I'd screenshot that and I'd carry it around and show it to your customers as third-party expert opinion. Because if you're doing that day in and day out and you're finding those little nuggets to help you make sense, remember, steady model, statistic, testimonial, expert opinion, which would be what I'm telling you to jump on the line and find, analogies, design, and then what you put into it, right? You're the actor. They buy you. At the end of the day, people buy you. You are the reason why. But if your inspection's weak and you don't know what you're doing, and you haven't practiced it so you can't get it wrong, then we're going to run ourselves into major problems. It's kind of what I want to go over today. And I know we talked a lot about what we don't sell, but you talk a lot about what you don't sell, so it makes sense on what you do sell. That makes sense? Mark, what's one thing you got from today?
Probably just comparing the different materials and also the superiority of the Ultrex.
So what I would say is you have to put the window that they're considering putting in a slice of life, right? If you take that sheet, right, and they're marking off all the options of what they do not want to have, it should be based on what they have going on in their house, not just general. You're not generally selling windows. You're selling windows. They're going to solve a problem on their house, right? So either that window's going to do what it needs to do or it's not going to do what it needs to do. And if it doesn't matter who sells it, how much or how little they're selling it for. Does that make sense? Mr. Brown, what'd you get?
I got a million things. The vinyl siding thing is huge because you have the visual and to show them. Because I would get people say, oh, we had vinyl before and, we're okay with vinyl now. And then you could explain them, well, you have a different installation. You guys had nailing fin. Explain to you why. So that's huge, having that because of expansion and contraction. And then the Fibrex, or not the Fibrex, but everything you were saying about the Ultrex is amazing. But what is that jam, not the jam extension, but the brick mold, what is that made of?
This is made of Ultrex. This here?
Oh, it is? Oh,
made of Ultrex.
Awesome.
See?
You do have
That's all
Ultrex
made
on
of-
the outer.
Yep, you see it's got a utility groove that's built for it. So they make it so that way it connects right to the window itself. So it's a system, right?
Wow.
So if you look at it, it's gorgeous, dude. This whole window system, I mean, I can't believe that we're not jumping all over it, man. It's such an awesome window product. It literally, if I wasn't in a training right now, I'd be jumping in the car with you because I think we're making mistakes by trying to swim in a sea of sameness. I really do. Janet, what'd you take away today?
Just got done brushing my teeth, so perfect timing. I'm the same, man. I like the comparison of vinyl siding to vinyl windows. And after seeing the pictures, I understand it now. But just pointing out why you never see vinyl siding houses in Southern California, and especially if they have a stucco house, it's kind of like, hey, there's a reason why this isn't a vinyl siding house, and this is why you don't need vinyl windows, whatever. Anyway, comparing it to the vinyl siding house was huge for me.
Yeah,
Like
you got to figure out why don't they use vinyl siding in Southern California, right? There's a reason why. Hey,
Just
what'd you
asking
get
that
today, bud?
question, just asking that question can really bring that to light for sure.
Absolutely. Dave, what'd you get today, my man?
I'm going
I'm
on
sorry,
my appointment.
Brett.
Bye. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello? Yeah,
Yep.
dude, I didn't know about the whole nailing flange with the space and stuff with the expansion contraction. Knew about the vinyl expanding contraction, but never put those two together. What I got out of this, Dustin, is we could basically take those slides that you showed in your desktop and build a presentation around that thing. Because everything out there is vinyl, or even if it's Fibrex, it's still 60% vinyl. So,
Yep.
I mean, you could build the presentation around that. And then the real power of the presentation, I think, is the same old thing that you always come back to is the strength of the company. Because of our company, because of the strength of it, is going to be there. So I think the real strength when we're selling these things like this is to not only sell our strengths, but to use that thing you talked about a month ago when you did the pen thing, when you were talking about branching and asking questions, is to start to ask questions about what these people are going to do when they don't buy from me. And they do buy vinyl, and they start having those problems. And the company that they buy from may or may not be in business to take care of them. And then what are they going to do?
Oh.
And then I think with those two things, you can build a whole presentation around that.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Because again, without need, trust doesn't matter, right? Without trust, there is no resolution. Without resolution, money doesn't matter. But if all of them are done correctly, you've got a system. And that system will help you get through anything you need. All right, guys. That's what I got today. So hopefully you enjoyed. You took a couple nuggets out of it. But using the vinyl siding and the nailing flange, if you want to make that common sense, and ask them, how many vinyl sided houses do you see around here? What do you mean? Well, how many vinyl sided houses do you see on the West Coast? Well, we don't. Because vinyl really, it's not that it's a bad product, but it's really designed for the Midwest and the East Coast where you see all the vinyl sided homes. Over here, because of the heat, that's one of the main reasons that we don't use that. And we don't want to get stuck into that sea of sameness, because what happens is the only reason why people do it. Well, let me ask you, why do you think the reason why contractors use it? Because it's cheap. Absolutely. And that's the reason why they're banking on you and banking on the fact that it only rains a couple times a year. And by that time, and it's installed in the house, they're probably out of business or change their name anyways. So again, remember, put yourself in a situation where you're building that trust, which is going to allow you to engineer that whole process for yourself. All right, guys, have an awesome day. By the way, my phone is broken. Hopefully it's in here soon today. And I will see you guys on the board. Good day yesterday. Great day yesterday. 150 Gs.
Thanks, Dustin.
All right.
Awesome.
See you guys.
All right, thanks a lot. See y'all.
Bye, man. Bye-bye.